The second metric is your career power. Your career power, as said, it maps onto the attitudes. And actually, the metaphor that we've used here is, so it's all in this fitness metaphor, where the career focus is, okay, what do you have a good training program? Do you know what to focus on in your training program? If you were doing fitness, in this case, then career fitness, your career power would then be, are you training your muscles? And how does this relate onto career fitness? It's actually your capacity for long-term career self-motivation and growth. What do we mean by that? It's sort of a flywheel effect on your career development efforts. So just like with regular fitness, if you're doing power training, it might take you a longer time to build up some mass or whatever you want to build up. It would be the same here. So you would be investing some more time in developing then your attitudes and a couple of other things. But in the long run, it will give you a flywheel effect. It will build up momentum, and therefore it will make everything you do afterwards more efficient. So it positively influences your career management and energy, and of course the results that you get from them. Just like with regular fitness, if you're doing power training, you're developing your muscles, and afterwards you're going to do some cardio training, then you would also have more effect from the cardio training. And the logic applies here as well. Of course, if we translate this to a career context, what we're really interested in is two things. So how well are you at self-motivating? Because then in the new career model, we don't expect that someone else is going to motivate you. It's totally up to you. And as we know, motivation and identity and adaptability are very important in being successful, both subjectively and objectively in your career. The second thing we want to know is how able are you to self-develop? And so that's the growth part. It's self-motivation and growth. Then if we look at what it contains, that still makes sense to all of you?
Yes.
Okay. Oh,
yes.
So what it contains, well, what we've called the core developmental potential, but those are your attitudes. And that's, I think, not so new to all of you. So the attitudes, the way we've always treated them in the career coach training as well, is this is your it's your development potential. It's those are the attitudes which will define if you're high on those attitudes, you will be taking more initiative in your career. You will have a stricter focus in your career management or career development. You will be open to new experiences, and therefore you will learn more. So this is sort of a leverage on your career development efforts. It's what's the English name again? Perhaps Dirk, you can help me out. Een hefboomfonds in English. No. No. Well, it just puts let's say a multiplicator on your career management efforts. That's basically.
Do you mean a lever?
A lever, yeah.
Lever. It's in French. It's un levier.
Yeah, yeah.
It's an accelerator, no?
Yeah, an accelerator, multiplicator. Well, whatever. So these are all. I'm now going perhaps.
Hedge fund, leverage. Yeah.
A hedge fund. Yeah, hedge fund. Yeah.
Okay, I was on mute.
They actually have the same meaning in English, right? So it's not leverage.
Yeah.
Okay, so it just leverages what you have and puts a multiplicator on it. It makes whatever effort you put into your career development in the long run makes that yield more return. So that's what the attitudes part. I think. I hope that makes sense to all of you. If not, feel free to interrupt me. The internal self-motivation capacity also, for besides the attitudes, we've also looked at some other parts of the report that tell us something about your capacities to self-motivate. On the one hand, there's autonomy. Autonomy, we know if you're high in autonomy, that you have less need for structure. So it's sort of a trade-off there. The more you have a need for structure, the less able you are at self-motivating. That's the logic. Personal goal attainment. So being someone who regularly sets him or herself small, attainable goals. That's also a practice, a good practice for self-motivation. And this relates to a practice which is called organismic internalization. So even if you're doing something which right now, which automatically you wouldn't call very intrinsically motivating, it might be neutral, it might be worse. By setting these goals, you make it more motivating. The example I can give here is, and Laura can probably also, well, either concur or tell me if I'm wrong, but being an instructor at a university, being a lecturer, one of the least motivating things for me was correcting exams. And I had this one course where I had to correct 800 exams at a time with open questions. So they had 3 open questions times 3, that's 2,400 pages of exams to correct. Let's say that was not the most motivating period for me. But the thing that made it more doable for me was I sort of motivated myself by taking tallies, putting a stripe every time that I went through an exam, and then I sort of organized these contests against myself. So how many of these tallies could I put in 1 hour? Since I worked with good answer keys and so on, in the end I could achieve speeds of 60 pages an hour, sometimes more, not a lot more, of course. And that sort of made it a bit more motivating to me. So that's what personal goal attainment does for you. So therefore, it's an important aspect of your self-motivation.
Yeah, that's a great example. I really like that. I agree.
Yeah, I guess that I haven't come across a lot of people who say that correcting exams is the most fascinating thing to do. Perhaps in philosophy, that you might be interested in some of the original answers that are given, but it's not my experience. Self-determination. Self-determination is a measure of confidence, your confidence related to the task. And therefore, actually, the higher you are on confidence, the more likely you are to look at something as an opportunity rather than as a chore or a threat or whatever. So so it will influence your positive emotions, and therefore, it's also, again, been shown to increase your self-motivation capacity.
Can I interrupt?
Sure.
Is it then one of the things of the energy stress balance, or is it something else?
Oh, self-determination. Yeah, right. Sorry.
Confidence is something else, I think. But
yeah, I'm looking at it wrong. Yeah, sorry. I was thinking of self-efficacy. No, it's self-determination. Sorry. Self-determination. That's right. That's a factor from the values, right? So sorry, I was a bit wrong here. Self-determination, that's your last factor from the values. And that's the combination of
yes, self-beschikking, that's the one.
So it's independence and satisficing, it's that factor.
Yeah, now I know. Okay, yeah. Thank you.
And it's this has to do with not having someone else dictate what you want to do, but setting your goals. It's not the same as personal goal attainment, which is just setting your small goals, but self-determination is rather being, it's like being autonomous, but then on the level not of the how you do your tasks, but choosing in the first place what tasks, what you're going to try and achieve this year, for instance. So that's self-determination. It's being much more independent in terms of the goals you want to set, and not being very, not being very sensitive, susceptible to external pressure. And therefore, it relates a bit to what we see here on the negative side, the second bullet. So self-determination, and you could also take this from the negative side. The more you are susceptible to being influenced as to what it is you want, what it is you want to do, the less you are being self-motivating. Which is the same, of course, for external recognition, which is why we have also put that in the formula, but as a negative. So the more you require external recognition, the less you're self-motivating, the more you're being motivated by others. Then personal growth, that also has to do with your growth orientation, your learning orientation. So people with who are high on personal growth are also more interested in trying new things, in learning new things, and so on, which also feeds into their core self-motivating capacity. Does that all still make sense?
Yes. Yes.
Yes.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Great. I have to watch the time here. Okay, so we're still right on time. The career power was the second of these breakdown metrics, and what comes after is the career energy metric.